It was one of those serene Sunday mornings, the kind where everything seems to be in perfect harmony and the world feels at peace. The birds were chirping, a light breeze blew through the trees, and I was sitting on the porch with my steaming mug of coffee, letting the quiet morning sink in. The sun was still low, casting a gentle warmth on the neighborhood, making everything feel right with the world. But that peace shattered the moment my eyes landed on our driveway. It was an ordinary driveway like any other in the neighborhood, but today something was very wrong. My heart sank as I saw it. Two large trucks parked in the space where we usually parked our cars, blocking our garage. The trucks were clearly not ours, and more importantly, they were parked without permission, taking up the space that belonged to my family. At first, I thought I was seeing things. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. But when I looked closer, my blood began to boil. Not only were the trucks parked illegally, but they were also taking up a significant portion of the driveway, completely obstructing our access to the garage. That meant we wouldn't be able to park our cars, which, considering the size of our family, was more than just an inconvenience. It was a problem. I stood up, trying to keep my composure. I took a deep breath, telling myself to stay calm. We've all had those moments when a situation catches us off guard, and the last thing you want is to react out of frustration. But let's face it, this wasn't a small issue. We had a right to our own property, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially a neighbor, trample over that. I grabbed my phone and checked the time, still early, but I knew I needed to address this before the day got any worse. I walked towards the driveway, determined to settle the matter diplomatically. As I got closer, I saw her, Janice Miller, the notorious HOA Karen of our neighborhood, stand casually by one of the trucks with her husband. She was chatting away, completely oblivious to the fact that she was parked in someone else's private space. Now, if you've ever had the displeasure of dealing with a Karen, you know exactly what I mean. Janice wasn't just your average homeowner. She was a self-proclaimed neighborhood authority. The kind of person who took it upon herself to monitor every little detail of everyone else's life, especially when it came to enforcing HOA rules. She had a reputation for sticking her nose where it didn't belong, calling out neighbors for the tiniest infractions, and acting as though she ran the entire block. She was notorious for overstepping her boundaries, so it wasn't a surprise that she felt entitled to park wherever she wanted, even if it meant blocking someone's driveway. But today she had crossed the line. I took another step forward and cleared my throat. "Janice," I called out, trying to keep my tone steady and polite. "You can't park here. We need this space to park our cars." Her reaction was immediate, but not what I expected. Without even looking at me properly, she simply waved her hand dismissively and gave me that smug little smirk I knew all too well. "Oh, I thought it was fine," she said in a condescending tone. "What's the big deal? You can park somewhere else for once. It's not like you're going to need this space all day." I was taken aback by her nonchalant response. How could she be so casual about taking up our parking space without any regard for the inconvenience she was causing? She didn't even apologize. She didn't even acknowledge that she was in the wrong. It was as if she assumed that, as usual, she could do whatever she wanted without facing any consequences. I stood there, dumbfounded. I tried to gather my thoughts and prepare a response, but before I could say anything, I heard the sound of a voice from behind me. It was Grandpa, my father's father, a man who had lived through countless challenges, who had always taught me the value of standing up for what's right. Grandpa was a man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. From the porch, Grandpa's booming voice rang out. "Janice," he called, loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "You parked in the wrong place, and you're not getting away with it this time." Janice looked up in surprise, her face momentarily losing its smug expression. For the first time, she looked uncertain. She wasn't used to anyone challenging her, especially not Grandpa. Grandpa had seen it all. A war veteran, a proud father, and a man who believed in doing things the right way. And when it came to his family, there was no backing down. Janice opened her mouth to respond, but Grandpa didn't give her a chance. He walked toward her with slow, deliberate steps. The kind of steps that meant he was about to say something that would leave a mark. I could already feel the shift in the air. Grandpa wasn't going to let this slide. With each word, Grandpa's voice grew stronger, his tone unwavering. What happened next would leave Janice speechless, and everyone who witnessed it would remember it for a long time. Grandpa wasn't the kind of man who would back down from a fight, especially when it came to his family. He had seen it all: world wars, family struggles, and decades of working as a mechanic. He had weathered countless storms and always came out stronger. If there was one thing Grandpa was known for, it was his no-nonsense approach to problems. He wasn't intimidated by anyone, and he certainly wasn't about to let someone like Janice, with her inflated sense of entitlement, get away with disrespecting his family. As I tried to reason with Janice, explaining that her trucks were blocking our access to the garage, Grandpa had been watching everything from the window. His eyes had never left the scene, and I could see the moment he decided it was time for him to step in. The way he moved was unmistakable. It was deliberate and purposeful. You could tell he wasn't just going out there for a simple conversation. He was about to make a statement, one that Janice and the whole neighborhood would remember for a long time. I watched as he made his way to the driveway, his gait steady and confident. Janice hadn't even noticed Grandpa approaching until it was too late. As he got closer, Grandpa's voice rang out loud enough to echo through the street, leaving no room for doubt. "Janice!" Grandpa called out, his booming voice cutting through the air like a sharp knife. It wasn't just a casual greeting, it was a declaration that the situation was about to change. "You parked in the wrong place, and I'm not going to stand by while you make a mockery of our property." Janice turned, clearly startled by the intensity of Grandpa's tone. Her eyes widened, and for a split second she looked unsure of how to react. She had likely never been spoken to this way, especially by someone she considered to be just an old man. But Grandpa wasn't one to be underestimated, especially when his family was involved. "Let me tell you something," Grandpa continued, taking slow but deliberate steps toward her. He wasn't rushing, but every step he took radiated authority. "You think you can just park wherever you like in my neighborhood? In my driveway? Well, you've got another thing coming." His voice was steady, and his words were laced with the kind of firm conviction that made Janice's posture stiffen. Janice tried to interject, but Grandpa wasn't having it. He raised his hand, a signal to silence her, and she hesitated. It wasn't often that someone stood up to her with such force. Most people cowered or tried to appease her, but not Grandpa. He had dealt with far worse in his life than a petty neighborhood dispute. "Here's the deal," Grandpa continued, his voice like a controlled burn, simmering with intensity but unwavering. "You've crossed the line today, Janice. You parked 2 of your trucks here without permission, blocking a family's access to their own home. I don't care if you're on the HOA board or if you think you can pull the strings around here. You are not in charge, and it's about time someone put you in your place." The words hung in the air for a moment, and the silence was palpable. Janice's face had turned a deep shade of red, her cheeks flushed with anger and embarrassment. She wasn't used to being called out, especially not in front of the whole neighborhood. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She was speechless. The scene was quickly gathering attention. Neighbors had started to peek out of their windows, and a few had even come outside, drawn by the commotion. The crowd grew larger as word spread that something big was happening. Whispers of approval rippled through the crowd as they realized what Grandpa was doing. They weren't just watching an old man call out a neighbor. They were witnessing someone stand up for what was right, something that had been sorely lacking in the neighborhood for too long. Janice tried to recover her composure, but it was clear she was rattled. "You can't talk to me like that," she snapped, her voice laced with indignation. "I'll have you know that I'm on the whole board, and you can't just—" "I can," Grandpa interrupted, his calmness only making his words more powerful. "And I will." He paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. "Now, here's the bottom line, Janice. You're going to move these trucks off of our property, and you're going to do it right now. If you don't, I'll be contacting the HOA myself, and believe me, they'll hear about this. I'm tired of people like you making our lives harder for no good reason. So take your trucks and move them. Or else." The crowd that had gathered began murmuring in agreement. It wasn't just a simple act of moving 2 trucks. It was about taking a stand against someone who thought they could walk all over everyone else. People were tired of Janice's antics. Grandpa wasn't just defending his driveway. He was defending the principle that no one should be above reproach, no matter how powerful they thought they were. Janice, now completely flustered, turned to leave, muttering something under her breath. But Grandpa wasn't done yet. "And if I ever see you park here again," he added with a final warning, "I won't be so kind." Consider this a lesson learned. As Janice finally moved her trucks, the crowd slowly began to disperse, but the whispers of approval continued. Grandpa had handled the situation with the kind of wisdom and authority that only someone with a lifetime of experience could possess. And just as the tension in the air began to ease, Grandpa turned to me with a small, satisfied grin. "Let's go inside, kid," he said casually, as if nothing had happened. That felt good. The tension in the air was palpable as Janice slowly realized that she had no choice but to back down. The standoff, which had felt like an eternity to her, was about to come to a bitter end. Grandpa had made it clear that there was no room for negotiation, no space for her self-imposed authority in this situation. With every word Grandpa spoke, Janice's posture visibly slumped further. The confident, entitled Karen persona she had cultivated for so long was crumbling in the face of Grandpa's calm, unwavering resolve. She tried to muster some form of defiance, but Grandpa's presence was too overwhelming. He wasn't just standing his ground, he was standing tall, a towering figure of authority that demanded respect. In that moment, it wasn't just about the trucks or the driveway. It was about power dynamics, the kind of power that came from doing what was right, not just what was convenient. Janice's face twisted in frustration. With a huff, she finally turned, muttering something under her breath that only she could hear. Grandpa stood firm, arms crossed, not once breaking eye contact as he watched her retreat. It wasn't in an aggressive way. It was more like watching a child throw a tantrum and knowing it was time for them to realize they couldn't get away with it anymore. As she struggled to maneuver her trucks out of our driveway, the collective sigh of relief from the onlookers seemed to echo down the street. The crowd that had gathered began to disperse, but there was something different in the air now. A sense of respect lingered in the atmosphere, a newfound admiration for Grandpa's bravery. Some of our neighbors gave him a subtle nod of approval, while others couldn't help but whisper words of praise, congratulating him for finally standing up to Janice's tyranny. I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride in my chest as I watched Grandpa remain unshaken. While Janice's focus was on getting her trucks out of our driveway, Grandpa had turned the entire situation on its head. He had reclaimed not just our space, but our dignity. He had proven that no one, not even a self-important HOA board member, was above the rules. No matter how much power they thought they had, there were boundaries, and Grandpa had shown Janice that those boundaries were meant to be respected. Once Janice finally managed to get her trucks out of the way and drove off, the neighborhood fell into an eerie quiet. But it wasn't the same kind of quiet we had before the confrontation. This was a respectful silence, the kind that comes when someone has earned the admiration of those around them. Grandpa had delivered his message, and it was clear that the respect he commanded had only grown stronger. Word spread quickly, as it always does in small neighborhoods. By the time the sun had set, people were talking about Grandpa's stand. Janice, for all her role in the HOA, was now viewed with a sense of wariness. She was no longer the untouchable authority figure she once believed herself to be. After that day, she never pulled a stunt like that again. Whether it was out of embarrassment or sheer realization that she couldn't just trample over people's rights, Janice's behavior shifted. But the real win wasn't just about getting our driveway back. It was about a lesson that needed to be taught. Grandpa hadn't just won a small battle. He had taught everyone in the neighborhood the importance of standing up for what's right. It wasn't about making a scene or being aggressive. It was about doing it with dignity and showing that authority could be wielded in a calm, controlled manner without losing one's integrity. As the crowd began to disperse, the warmth of the moment lingered. I could feel the eyes of our neighbors on us, some of them still processing what had just unfolded. There was no doubt in my mind that Grandpa had won not just the battle for the driveway, but also the respect of everyone who had witnessed it. Grandpa finally broke the silence, turning to me with a big smile on his face. "Let's go inside, kid," he said casually, as if this had all been just another ordinary day. I'm not getting any younger, but that felt good. And you know what? It was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. Grandpa had taken on a powerful figure in the neighborhood and emerged victorious not through force, but through wisdom, courage, and the sheer conviction to stand up for his rights. He had won not just that battle, but the respect of everyone around him. He had earned his moment to shine, and in doing so, had shown all of us the true meaning of standing tall in the face of adversity. As the neighbors went back inside, their conversations now filled with admiration for Grandpa, I couldn't help but smile. We had learned something that day, a lesson that would stick with us for a long time. The world can be full of people who think they can walk all over others, but it only takes one person to stand up, speak out, and put things right. And as for Janice, well, let's just say she knew better than to cross Grandpa again. The man had proven that no one was too powerful to be challenged, especially when it came to family. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of epic comebacks and neighborhood drama.